Hi, I'm Mossman from Snowflake, and my microphone definitely works. So I'm here, hopefully today, not just to talk about Snowflake, but actually to convince you that it matters, that you are going to take an interest in Snowflake. You look around at these events and you see so many different cool technologies, and you think, wow, that's amazing, that's cool, and you wake up tomorrow morning and you've already forgotten about them. So I'm going to talk about what it means for a software product to be relevant, and I'm going to talk about why Snowflake should be something that you care about. So Snowflake is a database service that runs in the cloud, which may mean something to you, it may not, but let's get into that into some more detail in a minute. The fact that something is cool isn't enough for it to be relevant to you, isn't enough for you to actually take an interest in it. There's more than one dimension. So of course, being a presentation, it has to have a quadrant. So my quadrant is cool. Things can be extremely cool, and you still have no interest in them. You can say that's an extremely cool thing, but it doesn't become part of your life. The other side is the so what. Does this thing, this product, this event, does this actually bring something new to your life, or does it take away some of the pain that's in your life? So, cool and so what? A little bit abstract. So what I've done is I've labeled this quadrant with the description. So if something is extremely cool and extremely relevant, then that's the ideal position. Some things are luxury items. They're cool, but not particularly useful. And some things aren't particularly interesting, but very useful. And actually, most of the stuff in the world kind of falls into this category. It's not particularly cool, not particularly useful. So, a bit of an abstract concept. So, I've played a little game with stuff in my kitchen. So, in my kitchen, I have a frying pan. That frying pan is extremely useful to me. It is not cool. There will be probably technology conferences going on right now that are devoted to the frying pan industry, where they'll be talking about alloys and coatings and whatever. Some people will find frying pans extremely cool. To me, it's something you use, not terribly interesting. I have a pasta maker. That makes me extremely middle class, I do know this. This pasta maker is in constant use. It's a great use to me, and it's also extremely cool. So that pasta maker belongs up in my, my top quadrant. My ice cream maker, on the other hand, I've used twice, and I don't think I'll ever use it again. It's too much trouble. This ice cream maker is cool in all senses of the word, and unfortunately it belongs in the luxury side of things. I would have said I have nothing in my kitchen that fits into this bottom quadrant, because I run really quite a tight ship. Unfortunately, I discovered this in the corner of one of my drawers. This is a device like a pencil sharpener for making something, a piece of vegetable into something that's like spaghetti. You can see this is still in the packaging and has never been used. I actually didn't know my wife had bought this. So this would be definitely a bottom quadrant, not very cool, not very useful item. So let's play something a bit more relevant to our day-to-day lives, the IT edition of this. Microsoft Word. Does anyone want to call out a quadrant for Microsoft Word? Down, 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 down and right, exactly. So extremely useful, couldn't do without it, but unless you're a real expert in Microsoft Word, you really don't find it a particularly cool thing. Python. To me, Python is the most interesting and useful programming language there is. So this is all very personal, very, everybody will have a different idea. Maybe this is a luxury thing to you. Maybe you don't find Python particularly cool, but to me, Python is cool. So Python goes into the top corner. Blockchain. This may divide the room. To me, blockchain is a cool technology, but I don't actually have any use for it. None of the problems I have can be solved by blockchain. So to me, blockchain belongs in the kind of luxury quadrant. Hadoop, yeah, so it's not as cool as it used to be, neither is it as widespread useful as it used to be. So to me, Hadoop, and this is my personal opinion, belongs up here. And Mr. Clippy from Office, he can go down here. So what this diagram is meaning to say is that if I were at a conference and I went to the stalls for these different technologies, I would be very, very interested in everything here, but I would have forgotten about everything apart from this in the morning. To me, it has to be cool, and it also has to be useful to get my attention. So, is Snowflake cool? The way I'm going to talk about Snowflake being cool is through my own experience, the way that I first found out about Snowflake. You may have a different journey with it, but this is my story. So I first came across Snowflake when I was working for a database company whose product was in data centers. It was an on-premise database company, and they sold software that was very good. I worked there for 3 or 4 years, and I would still recommend it for a particular use case. But I was pitching my product. I was at a customer site in London at a fintech company, and I finished my song and my dance and waited to hear what they would say. And they said, yeah, nice demo, but how does it compare to Snowflake? So I was used to competing with Teradata and Vertica and SQL Server and Oracle Exadata. I'd never heard of Snowflake. So I had to say, look, actually, can I get back to you? I'll do some research and I'll answer your, I'll send you an email and I'll compare my product to Snowflake tomorrow. So I went home and I did some research on Snowflake. First thing at the time, if you research Snowflake, you would come up with the ice cream making company of the same name. We've now changed that. The marketing department at Snowflake got the message out to a much better extent. So your first hit, if you Googled Snowflake, would not be the ice cream company anymore. But after I had something to eat, because of course this made me feel hungry, I went back and tried to find something else out about Snowflake. And what I hit upon was something called Snowflake in 8 minutes. It was a YouTube video that took you from the start, from an empty screen, and showed you how you could implement Snowflake databases, do things with the databases, load data, and take you from zero to a fully working data model. So this is a section from 2 minutes into the presentation, and already within 2 minutes, what the person has done is create a database and fill it full of data. I started to think when I was watching this, what I would have to do at my previous company to do the same thing. I would have to assume that there was hardware available. If the hardware was available, I'd then need to install the software on each of the pieces of hardware. I'd have to network them together. And then, well, I'd have to go through a few other steps. In other words, it would take me way more than 2 minutes to get started, to implement a database and fill it full of data. In fact, the 2 minutes is mostly taken up with setting the scene. There's about 20 seconds worth of actual IT that's happening during those 2 minutes. So I was extremely impressed with how easy it was to get going with Snowflake, and the fact that it looked very much like any other database. The fact that you don't need to maintain the hardware. It's a database service. You just bring your data and you connect your query tools, and you can run from a very small amount of data up into petabytes of data. and you can have thousands of concurrent users using that database at the same time. Or you could have a few gigabytes of data and 2 or 3 users using it at the same time. It's the same technology. It scales like anything. There is no limit to the scaling of Snowflake. And this also was something that impressed me, because at my previous company, if I wanted to increase the size of the processing power or store more data, I'd have to basically kick off a project. I would have to get some more hardware. I would have to install it in the cluster. I'd have to redistribute the data. And during that time, the database would be down. But here, I can resize this thing instantly without anybody being aware of any outage at all. And also, because this is a service, there's no need to bring it down at any time. Snowflake updates its software in the background. Using Snowflake is very like using something like Google Mail. You don't need to keep on updating to the latest version of Google Mail. It's already updated by Google. With Snowflake, we update Snowflake every week. We have a rollout every week. You might be used to your software vendor having a patch release that comes out every quarter. We roll it out every week. We have a continuous integration and implementation cycle that constantly updates Snowflake with the latest version. 2 minutes. So I'm already impressed, and I'm already a little worried about what I'm going to tell this customer. If I wind forward to 4 minutes, they're really starting to show off. What they're doing is loading JSON data, so semi-structured data, into Snowflake. And Snowflake has the possibility of being able to store semi-structured and structured data together in the same place, and for you to combine the 2 sources of data in the same queries. So effectively, you have a data warehouse, which is structured data and SQL. You also have a data lake kind of approach where you can store semi-structured data and query it actually using SQL. We have extensions to our SQL language so you can work with semi-structured data. So you have data warehouse, data lake. I like to say data lake house, but everybody in marketing is trying to make me stop using that term. But I think that's a good way of referring to a cross-breed between a data warehouse and a data lake. So 4 minutes in. When we get further on, actually at this point, you can ask my wife if this is true. I was actually laughing. It was just so strange. I was seeing something that was just from the future, from a foreign land. The ability to run really quite complicated SQL queries against this database, to have clusters that are devoted to loading the data and querying the data in different ways, and for all of these to happen at the same time without each of them getting in each other's way. You know, this is very powerful. Usually when you have lots of different user communities using the common data, you get arguments. You know, one of the teams will be taking all of the computing power and the queries for everybody else will be slowing down. With Snowflake, you don't have this. You can give each user community their own computing power. They can use that and be totally unaware that another team is really hitting the database hard. So my mind was blown with this. And by now, they've already mentioned some other features. For example, an idea called cloning, where you could take a snapshot of the production database, make a point-in-time copy of it, and use that for development, test, QA, for example, rather than having to spin up separate hardware and then move your data across and use that as a test environment. The idea is a test environment within a few seconds, which will stop you from doing your testing on production, which is a very bad habit, and you really should not do this. The other idea, the idea of time travel, which totally blew my mind. The ability to query the database as it was at a previous point in time. Anytime you commit data in Snowflake, that is a point to which you could return. You can say on a Monday you create a table, Tuesday you load it full of data, Wednesday you do an update, and Thursday some crazy person does an update they really shouldn't have done. And you want to go back to Wednesday, you can do this with Snowflake without having to schedule a backup, look after backups, restore backups, and then wind forward to a particular point in time. You can return to any point in time in the last 90 days with Snowflake without having to schedule a backup. So my experience was all with on-premise databases. I'd never seen a cloud database before. Now I had. And just before they finished, they said, get started with $400 of free credits. At the time, the company I was working for were actually charging for evaluations, because to run an evaluation on an on-premise database, you would have to borrow some hardware and then borrow, well, me. You'd have to borrow me for a few days. So they would actually charge for this. I come to Snowflake and they're saying, knock yourself out, go to the website, get started, and we'll pay $400 for you to have a play with it. Okay, so you can imagine the kind of effect that had on me. This was from the future, strange. I don't know if you've ever fallen in love. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that that was the feeling I had the first time I saw this Snowflake in 8 minutes. It was such an incredible effect that I quit my job. Excuse me. I quit my job and I moved down to London and I started working with the 5 people in Europe who were Snowflake in Europe. There's more than 5 these days. That was 2.5 years ago. We've got more like 250 in Europe. And that growth has come not from Snowflake being cool. Being cool, these features, they impress nerds. Are there any nerds in the audience? Are there any of my people? Yeah. Got plenty nerds. Other people need more than cool. They need what I call the so what. They need to know that this actually brings something to their work or takes away some of the pain in their work. And that's what I'd like to move on to next. How does Snowflake do in terms of being at all useful? What I'd ask you to do is to do some imagination. Imagine in your business if you could simplify your architecture. I imagine, unless you already have Snowflake, your architecture kind of looks a bit like this. There's lots of sources of data, plenty of databases, and then people that are consuming it. And this is a very expensive and inflexible architecture. If you want to change something here, that is a project. If you want to bring in a new data source, you're going to have to really think hard about how you're going to make sure that you don't break anybody else's report. And from the point of view of the people running the reports, they have no idea how that data got to be where it is. And asking questions like, why doesn't this include this other piece of data? There should be some extremely funny pictures on the right side, but it looks like they've gotten lost in the transcription process. What you have is in a Snowflake kind of environment, if you include Snowflake as what I like to call the place where data comes together. Snowflake is a single source where you can pull data. So I've put on our partners Fivetran and Looker, who we're exhibiting with today. Fivetran have a great way of being able to connect to APIs and data sources and bring that data into Snowflake. And Looker have a tremendous solution for visualizing that data, for putting a model on top of the data. So with something like this, and instead of having that cat's cradle or spaghetti of connections between data source, database, and user, you've got a very straightforward pipeline that's seamless and can be easily updated and easily understood. There were pictures of dancing, which is why dancing is not guaranteed, but yeah, let's move on. Snowflake, it runs as a service. You do not need to do the usual kind of DBA activities. You do not need to manage hardware. You don't need to manage network. You don't need to do clustering. You don't even need to define indexes. Snowflake is designed to run by itself as a service. You connect to Snowflake. You load your data. You connect whatever tools you want to use to work with it. And Snowflake will roll out any updates that are available, will fix any bugs in the background, and you never need any downtime. So as well as being nice and easy to understand, it's really easy to maintain. This $400 of free credits, sign up on the website. You can see how easy it is in practice. All your data on one platform. There is no limit to the amount of data you can put on Snowflake. Snowflake stores its data on cloud storage. So as much data as will go on S3 or Azure Blob Storage or Google Cloud Storage, we can store in the Snowflake platform. You can keep on adding data. You will not fill up a Snowflake database. That data can be structured or semi-structured. You don't need a separate solution for JSON data or Parquet or any of the semi-structured formats. You can bring everything into one place. And it's really cheap to store data on Snowflake. It costs something like $23 per compressed terabyte per month to store data on Snowflake. And that is 23, not 23,000. That kind of means that it's as cheap to store data in Snowflake as it is to store it anywhere else. So you might as well bring all of your data into one place. Our customers do this. They bring every piece of data that might have some kind of relevance, and then they can combine it with the other data that's there and get this extra value from having everything together in one place. Guaranteeing SLAs, the fact that we have ways of isolating computing clusters and giving them to different workloads. So you can run as many workloads as you've got in your company. I'm sure you have competing workloads. The usual competition is with the loading of data. Usually you try and put this to the quiet times. Maybe you load at weekends or you load at night. You don't need to do this with Snowflake. You just give the loading its own computing power, and the people who want to query it, for example, a dashboard application, you give them their own computing power. And then loading of data and querying of data can happen at the same time without one slowing down the other. The other group of people who tend to have an image problem in a BI environment are the data scientists. The people who are going to run big, hairy, crazy analytical queries against the data. Those people are always told to run their queries at quiet times because they don't want everything else slowing down when they run those big queries. By giving them their own compute resource in Snowflake, that group of people can go crazy. They can run whatever queries they like without slowing down any of the other queries running in that are using another cluster of computing power. So you can guarantee an SLA. The speed doesn't change depending on what else is going on the system. And just before I end, this is a feature that wasn't available in the 8 minutes to Snowflake that I first saw. In Snowflake, we are a multi-tenant environment. We take in data for lots of different users, and we keep that data separate so that your data is separated from the data we have for other customers, unless you actually want to share it with another Snowflake customer. We have this feature we call data sharing that allows you to grant read-only access to data that's stored within your Snowflake account to somebody else who's using another Snowflake account. So this means that you don't need to take a big dump out of your database to a file, ship a file to the person that you want to give the data to, and then they have to put it into their database. You simply give them the access, and it appears as if it were magic in their Snowflake account. And we've built on that something we call the data exchange. The data exchange is like an app store for data. We have built up a considerable number of Snowflake customers who have some very valuable data that they're looking to share with other companies. And by going onto the exchange, people who want to make use of that data can simply sign up, become part of this data sharing, and the data that they're looking for will magically appear in their database as if it were their own data, and it will be updated every time the origin of that data is updated. So if I were watching this 8 Minutes to Snowflake now, I'd be even more knocked out and in love with this this technology. This data sharing idea, I think, is going to be big for us. So, Snowflake, cool, and a large amount of so what. So I'm going to kind of put it up there. So thank you very much. That's my introduction to Snowflake.